There is a company with more money under management than the GDP of nearly every nation on Earth, over $10 trillion, holding power in Apple, Disney, and the banks you use every day. But BlackRock is not just Wall Street's puppet master. Through a single platform, it quietly exerts leverage over markets, governments, even entire economies. How did a firm most people have never heard of become the system itself? And what happens if it ever fails? BlackRock manages more money than the economies of Japan, Germany, and the United Kingdom combined. Its assets under management now top $10 trillion, a figure that dwarfs the gross domestic product of every country except the United States and China. This is not a bank or a government, but a single company headquartered in Manhattan with direct financial stakes in over 8,000 companies across 100 countries. Every minute, cash pours in from pension funds, insurance companies, sovereign wealth funds, and millions of ordinary investors, all seeking a piece of the global market. The scale defies easy comparison. $10 trillion is more than the entire annual economic output of Latin America. It is more than the value of all the gold ever mined in human history. The world's largest oil producers, tech giants, and defense contractors all count BlackRock as a top shareholder. According to SEC filings, BlackRock holds more than 6% of Apple, nearly 7% of JP Morgan Chase, and significant stakes in ExxonMobil and Disney. Its reach stretches from Wall Street to Silicon Valley, from London to Shanghai. The company's influence is not theoretical. It is written into the balance sheets of the world's most powerful corporations. This is financial gravity on a planetary scale, pulling every major industry into its orbit. Where money flows, BlackRock is already there, quietly collecting a share of the future. A single glance at BlackRock's portfolio reveals a hidden web stretching across the pillars of daily life. SEC Form 13F filings list BlackRock as a top shareholder in Apple, holding more than 6% of the company's outstanding shares. Each time an iPhone is sold or a new service launches, a portion of the profit flows to BlackRock's funds. In the world of finance, BlackRock's grip tightens further. Nearly 7% of JP Morgan Chase, America's largest bank, belongs to BlackRock-managed accounts. This means the deposits, mortgages, and credit cards used by millions are tied to a company with no branches, no ATMs, and no public-facing brand, yet a seat at the table of every boardroom. The reach does not end with tech or banking. BlackRock owns major slices of Disney, the world's most influential entertainment company. Its stake covers everything from blockbuster films and streaming platforms to the theme parks families visit on holiday. Energy giants like ExxonMobil, essential to the global supply chain, also count BlackRock among their largest investors. This cross-industry footprint is documented in quarterly filings, stamped and submitted to regulators, mapping out a pattern of silent, overlapping control. The same company that profits from your phone, your bank, your favorite movie, and the electricity in your home stands behind them all, collecting dividends from every corner of the modern economy. This is not just investment. It is ownership, embedded in the daily transactions of life, visible only to those who know where to look. Every day, billions flow into BlackRock's index funds, but the mechanics behind this process are almost invisible to the outside world. At the heart of it all is a system built on automation and strict rules. When investors buy shares of a BlackRock ETF, they are not purchasing a random bundle of stocks. Instead, a group of powerful financial institutions, known as authorized participants, steps in. These are the major banks and market makers, firms like Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan, with the exclusive right to create and redeem ETF shares directly with BlackRock. Here is how the cycle works. When demand for a BlackRock ETF rises, an authorized participant assembles a precise basket of stocks that mirrors the index, for example, the S&P 500. That basket is delivered to BlackRock, which in return issues a new block of ETF shares. The authorized participant then sells those shares to investors on the open market. If there is too much supply, the process reverses. The participant collects ETF shares, returns them to BlackRock, and receives the underlying stocks back. This creation and redemption loop happens in massive volumes, sometimes tens of billions of dollars a day, all governed by rigid prospectus rules and algorithmic triggers. The result is a relentless, automatic accumulation of shares in every company tracked by the index. BlackRock does not pick and choose. The rules dictate what gets bought. As long as investor money flows in, the engine keeps running, steadily increasing BlackRock's ownership in thousands of firms without a single discretionary trade. The process is mechanical, but the outcome is anything but ordinary. The rise of passive investing has quietly rewritten the rules of corporate power. As money rushes into index funds and exchange-traded funds, a handful of asset managers now sit atop the shareholder lists of nearly every major company. Since 2008, more than $7 trillion has poured into United States index funds and exchange-traded funds, with BlackRock capturing a massive share of those flows. This relentless buying is not guided by human judgment. It is dictated by the mathematics of the index. If a company is in the S&P 500, BlackRock's funds must own it, no matter the business, no matter the sector. The result is a concentration of ownership that spans competitors, suppliers, and rivals. For the typical company in the S&P 500, BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street together own more than 20%. In some industries, the same three names are the largest shareholders of every major player in airlines, banks, media, and energy. Academic studies warn that this pattern of common ownership can dull competition. When the same investors hold stakes in both Coke and Pepsi, or in all the big banks, incentives to undercut each other fade. Corporate boards, facing the same major shareholders across the table, may focus less on innovation and more on stability. Control does not just mean profits. It means voting power at annual meetings, on executive pay, on mergers, and on strategy. Each year, BlackRock casts votes on behalf of millions of investors, shaping the direction of the world's largest companies. Critics argue this silent concentration of power erodes true market competition and accountability. The system now depends on a handful of firms making the right choices, not just for investors, but for the entire economy. Aladdin is not a single application, but a sprawling digital architecture, an operating system for money itself. At its core, Aladdin processes more than $21.6 trillion in assets, a sum that exceeds the GDP of any country except the United States and China. Its reach extends far beyond BlackRock's own funds. Over 70% of the world's sovereign wealth funds, pension plans, and insurance giants rely on Aladdin to track, analyze, and manage their portfolios. The platform is built on a foundation of modular systems each tailored to a different corner of the financial universe. The risk management module calculates exposure in real time, drawing on high-frequency data feeds to measure market shocks, liquidity crunches, and black swan events. The compliance engine automatically generates regulatory reports, flagging suspicious trades and ensuring every transaction meets global standards such as Basel III and the SEC requirements. Aladdin's investment optimization tools use machine learning to test strategies, backtest scenarios, and fine-tune asset mixes across equities, bonds, private equity, and real estate. Its climate analysis module links climate models to individual securities, allowing clients to simulate the impact of carbon risk on their holdings. For those managing vast, complex portfolios, Aladdin offers a single dashboard that unifies every asset, every risk, every compliance obligation, public and private, domestic and offshore. The technology behind Aladdin is as formidable as its client list. Distributed cloud computing, powered by Microsoft Azure and Snowflake, lets Aladdin process petabytes of data without interruption. Artificial intelligence engines scan news headlines and market sentiment, feeding insights back into the risk models. The system's open architecture connects seamlessly to Bloomberg, Refinitiv, and other data providers, ensuring no market move goes unnoticed. Real-time processing pipelines flag anomalies before they spiral into crises. The Bank of Israel, for example, adopted Aladdin to bring order to a fragmented investment landscape. Previously, the central bank struggled to see all its exposures at once. Now Aladdin delivers daily, portfolio-wide visibility, combining internal and externally managed assets, running custom stress tests, and benchmarking performance against global standards. Aladdin's modules work in concert, orchestrating a level of control and transparency that legacy systems cannot match. But this unification comes with a price, a growing dependence not just for BlackRock, but for an entire ecosystem of financial giants. The next section explores what happens when so much power is concentrated in the hands of a single digital system. In the world of finance, a single system now pulses at the center of the global machine. Aladdin processes more than $21 trillion in assets, serving as the risk command center for over 70% of the world's sovereign wealth funds, pension giants, and insurance companies. When Aladdin's algorithms detect a spike in volatility, the platform does not just alert BlackRock. It sends signals to hundreds of the largest financial institutions, often at the same instant. Imagine, for a moment, what happens when over 70% of the world's biggest investors receive the same warning, calculated by the same risk engine, based on the same data feeds. A liquidity spiral can begin with a single trigger. Aladdin's models might flag a sudden drop in tech stocks or a shock in European bond yields. Within seconds, the same risk alert flashes across dashboards in New York, London, Tokyo, and Zurich. Portfolio managers, guided by Aladdin's recommendations, start selling the same assets to reduce exposure. The market, already on edge, absorbs an avalanche of identical trades. Prices fall faster. Aladdin's algorithms, recalculating in real time, detect new risks and issue fresh alerts. The cycle accelerates. This is not just theory. Academic studies warn that concentration of risk management in a single platform can amplify shocks. If too many institutions move in lockstep, liquidity can vanish. During the 2020 market crash, liquidity in US Treasury markets evaporated for hours, as automated systems triggered mass selling. While no public evidence ties Aladdin directly to a single event, the architecture creates the conditions for synchronized action on an unprecedented scale. A full-scale outage would be even more severe. If Aladdin's cloud infrastructure failed, thousands of funds and central banks would lose access to real-time risk data, compliance tools, and portfolio analytics. Regulatory reports would halt. Trading desks would be forced to operate blind, unable to assess exposures or run stress tests. In a world where trillions depend on a single digital nervous system, a technical failure could freeze the arteries of global finance. The scenario is hypothetical, but the risk is real. BlackRock's Aladdin is not just a tool. It has become the central nervous system of the world's markets, connecting rivals, regulators, and nations to a single source of truth. When so much power flows through one circuit, the smallest glitch can become a systemic shock. On March 23, 2020, as global markets buckled under the first wave of pandemic panic, the Federal Reserve made an unprecedented move. In a matter of days, BlackRock was handed the keys to the government's emergency bond buying program, the Secondary Market Corporate Credit Facility, known as SMCCF. This was not a small advisory role. The Federal Reserve's own press release named BlackRock as the manager of up to $750 billion in corporate debt purchases, with the United States Treasury providing a $75 billion equity backstop. The arrangement allowed BlackRock to buy bonds and exchange traded funds on behalf of the central bank, including some of BlackRock's own iShares funds. Public officials were effectively outsourcing execution to a private titan. The contract summary, released weeks later, detailed a compensation structure that scaled with the program's size, but the real value was access. BlackRock's algorithms and risk models, already trusted by the world's largest investors, now guided the Federal Reserve's hand in stabilizing the credit markets. The firm's staff coordinated directly with Federal Reserve officials, executing trades that shaped the daily flow of capital through the United States financial system. This was not BlackRock's first turn at the center of a crisis. During 2008, the firm had already managed toxic assets for the Federal Reserve. But the pandemic response set a new precedent. A single private company, wielding proprietary technology, had become the operational arm of the central bank. The boundary between public authority and private power blurred, not in theory, but in signed contracts and daily transactions. For the first time, the Federal Reserve's emergency interventions ran through the same systems that drive BlackRock's global empire. Each spring, as annual meetings approach, BlackRock's influence moves from the trading floor to the boardroom. As the largest shareholder in thousands of public companies, BlackRock controls a staggering number of proxy votes, ballots that decide who sits on corporate boards, how executives are paid, and which policies guide the world's biggest firms. This voting power is not a passive right. It is a lever pulled behind the scenes by BlackRock's investment stewardship team, whose decisions ripple across the global economy. The mechanics are precise. For most index funds, BlackRock retains the authority to vote on behalf of investors, casting ballots in line with its benchmark policy. In 2022, the company introduced voting choice, allowing some institutional clients, representing over $800 billion in assets, to direct their own votes or select third-party policies. Still, the vast majority of shares remain under BlackRock's stewardship, giving the firm a direct say in the fate of more than 18,000 companies worldwide. Voting power at this scale changes outcomes. Larry Fink, BlackRock's CEO, makes no secret of the agenda. In his annual letters to CEOs, he urges companies to adopt environmental, social, and governance (ESG) standards, warning that those who fail to adapt risk losing access to BlackRock's massive funds. Stakeholder capitalism is not woke, Fink wrote in 2022. It is capitalism, driven by mutually beneficial relationships between you and the employees, customers, suppliers, and communities your company relies on to prosper. Stakeholder ideas shape corporate priorities. Through proxy voting, BlackRock can push for climate disclosures, board diversity, and executive accountability. Companies that resist these measures often find themselves isolated from the deep pools of passive capital that drive modern markets. Critics argue that this is not just investment stewardship, but a form of unelected governance, one where the largest asset manager in history shapes corporate policy on a global scale, with little public oversight and no direct vote from ordinary investors. Today, a single company's algorithms quietly shape trillions of dollars in global wealth, impacting markets, governments, and daily life without a single vote cast. As passive investing grows, BlackRock's influence deepens, raising urgent questions about accountability in an era where financial power eclipses political borders. The world's largest shareholder never stands for election, yet its shadow falls over us all. What checks a system when its architect is invisible? Share your thoughts below.